Welcome to my channel. In this video I will explain the origins, development and deployment of the American armored divisions from the First World War until the end of the Second World War. The American tank force has its roots in World War I. The tank became increasingly important when America entered the war in 1917. General John J. Pershing appreciated the idea of the tank and set his officers to work to supervise the development of such a force. The Tank Corps started recruiting and training through most of 1918. In August 1918, the tank force in France was issued a patch which would become the symbol of the American tank force. The three colors symbolized the collaboration between the traditional branches of the army: the infantry, the artillery and the cavalry. The triangular shape symbolized the head of a spear to emphasize the concept of a breakthrough by combined arms, with the tanks at the tip as a modern form of cavalry. Despite an ambitious expansion plan, the tank force could muster only 2 battalions of light Renault tanks at the eve of the first American offensive at St. Mihiel in September 1918. The 2 battalions were under the command of the US 304th Tank Brigade, but they were separately deployed to support infantry divisions. Despite the ambitious plans for a sizable tank force, the tank force was never deployed in mass above battalion level. After the war, the Tank Corps lost its independence status in 1920 and was integrated as a part of the infantry. Tank service should be under general supervision of the Chief of Infantry and should not constitute an independent service. The German successes in May 1940 triggered the Americans to start developing their own independent tank force. During the large-scale Louisiana maneuvers in the same month, a provisional mechanized force was created by assembling a provisional tank brigade from the existing tank battalions from the infantry and the 7th Cavalry Brigade, which consisted of mechanized battalions. After evaluating the findings of the maneuvers, it was decided by U.S. Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall to form a separate armored force again. He ordered the 1st Armored Division to be assembled under the command of General Abner R. Chaffee, who is considered the father of the modern armored force. He previously commanded the aforementioned 7th Mechanized Cavalry Brigade and merged the elements of that unit patch with the original triangle from the armored force. The new logo was rounded off with a dark green line. On July 15, 1940, 2 initial armored divisions were put under the command of an armored army corps, which again mimicked the German development of grouping armored divisions into a dedicated armored corps. The US Armored Corps had an extra independent armored battalion as well. General Chaffee took command of this armored corps, which underlines the importance of his personality in the development of the armored force, despite his early death in 1941. In the first table of organization, the armored division was built around the armored brigade, consisting of 3 battalions of tanks, 1 medium tank battalion and 2 light tank battalions. The brigade also harbored an artillery regiment and an engineer battalion. Next to the armored brigade was a mechanized infantry regiment with 3 battalions, and there was a separate armored car reconnaissance battalion. In November 1940, the divisional structure was changed by the removal of the engineer battalion from the armored brigade in order to be put under direct divisional command, and the addition of a separate artillery battalion under direct divisional command. After the activation of the 1st and 2nd Armored Divisions in May 1940 and the forming of the 1st Armored Corps in July of that year, it took almost another year before 2 more armored divisions were raised. After that, the rate of new divisions picked up, and half a year later the 5th Armored Division was raised, followed by the formation of the 2nd Armored Army Corps in January 1942, and the 6th Armored Division 1 month later. Since then, an armored division was formed almost every month. The expansion of the number of armored divisions picked up slow because divisions were raised by extracting a nucleus from an existing division until the 8th Armored Division was designated as a training unit for replacements in the spring of 1942. In the spring of 1942, The former organization of an armored division was thoroughly revised. The artillery regiment was removed from the armored brigade, and divisional artillery was henceforth armored in the form of 3 armored artillery battalions. The engineer battalion was also reformed as an armored engineer battalion. The armored brigade structure was abandoned altogether, and the number of armored regiments was reduced to 2, with each 2 medium tank battalions and 1 light tank battalion. The most important change was the creation of 2 so-called combat commands. These commands were the beginning of a more flexible divisional structure and a more combined arms approach. This was the structure of the armored divisions which went into battle in November 1942 when the Americans landed in North Africa. The 1st Armored Corps, under the command of General George S. Patton, was deployed in North Africa, but soon after the landings the corps was broken up. The 1st Armored Division was detached and the 17th Armored Battalion as well. The Armored Corps was left behind in Algeria, while the 1st Armored Division was sent to Tunisia for the first confrontation with the German army. Meanwhile, the American armored force kept expanding. As said, the armored force kept expanding due to the formation of a divisional armored training outfit in the shape of the 8th Armored Division. This meant that in 1942, on average, 1 armored division was activated every month. In the beginning of 1943, the training was transferred to the 20th Armored Division, which led to the creation of the 16th Armored Division. This meant that in 1 year, the number of armored division and armored corps doubled. Despite the success of the expansion of the armored force, the first confrontation between the American 1st Armored Division and the German tank forces in Tunisia led to heavy losses, in which the division lost more than half of its tanks. The setbacks in North Africa led to a new reorganization of the armored divisions. One of the armored regiments was disbanded, and the regimental headquarters was removed from the remaining armored battalion. The distinction between medium and light armored battalions was also abolished. The mechanized infantry would also lose its regimental headquarters. The purpose was more flexibility to use these battalions under the umbrella of the combat commands. For this purpose, an extra combat command reserve was created. A combat command under the leadership of a brigadier general would group different battalions and other subunits, like reconnaissance and engineer companies, into a combined arms unit. Meanwhile, the idea of the Armored Army Corps was dropped in the summer of 1943. The existing 4 Army Corps were converted into Army Commands and Infantry Army Corps. Henceforth, armored divisions were attached to regular Army Corps with infantry divisions. The reorganization of the armored divisions did not concern all armored divisions. The old 1942 organization was retained by some armored divisions, and those became to be known as heavy armored divisions. Originally, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 12th and 14th Armored Divisions were planned as heavy armored divisions, but by the middle of 1944 only the 2nd and 3rd had remained heavy armored divisions. All the other were converted to so-called light armored divisions. The M4 Sherman tank became the main medium battle tank in 1943. The main difference between the so-called heavy and light armored divisions was the amount of tanks. The heavy armored division had 1/3 more medium tanks than the light division, and almost double the amount of light tanks than the light armored division. This was not the only change. The distribution of light and medium tanks changed dramatically in 3 years. In 1940, there were 2 regiments of light tanks and only 1 with medium tanks. In 1942, this changed to 2 regiments with each 2 battalions with medium tanks and 1 with light tanks. In 1943, there were 3 battalions with each 3 medium tank companies and 1 light tank company. The number of light tanks not only dramatically declined, but their significance also declined within the organization structure over time. The invasion of Italy in July 1943 saw the baptism of fire for the 2nd Armored Division, which was withdrawn after the conquest of Sicily. From September 1943, the refitted 1st Armored Division came into action on the Italian mainland, where it remained until the end of the war in 1945. In June 1944, the Normandy campaign in France saw the redeployment of the 2nd Armored Division, followed by the 3rd, 4th and 6th Armored Divisions in July 1944, and the following month the 5th and 7th Armored Divisions. The Normandy campaign saw the largest concentration of armored divisions in the European theater so far in the wake of Operation Cobra on July 25th. Collins' 7th Corps had both heavy armored divisions as its reserve to exploit the breakthrough. On top of that, the supporting 8th Corps had 2 more armored divisions for the follow-up of the breakthrough. The Normandy campaign didn't lead to a change in the composition of the armored division, but from June 1944 there was development to attach a tank destroyer battalion to the armored divisions, but they never became an integral part of its organization structure. A more telling fact of the armored divisions was their long period of preparation before going into action. The first 7 armored divisions didn't go into action after at least 2.5 years of training and exercises. Even in the autumn of 1944, the newly arrived armored divisions had at least 2 years of preparation under their belt before arriving at the front. The Germans could only have dreamt of this long kind of training and preparation, but nevertheless they managed to scrape together a major force for a counterattack through the Ardennes in December 1944. This triggered a major crisis in the American sector of the Western Front. All neighboring armored divisions were rushed to the scene, and 6 out of 9 US armored divisions on the Western Front were involved in this battle. After the Ardennes offensive, there were 12 armored divisions on the Western Front, of which 4 were assembled to cross the Ruhr near Aachen, while 4 others were under 3rd Army control to move into the Saarland. But it was the 9th Armored Division, under the umbrella of the 1st Army, which first crossed the Rhine at Remagen in March 1945. Despite the fact that the war was practically decided, 4 more armored divisions arrived in 1945, including the original training division, like the 8th and the 20th Armored Divisions. They were involved in the final drive into the German heartland in April 1945. In the end, 16 armored divisions were raised during the Second World War. All were deployed on the Western Front, although 13th Armored Division was training for the amphibious invasion of Japan in August 1945, which never came about. If you like my content, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications for new content.